All their communication systems are moving through the consciousness field and are thought actuated. The people at the CIA call it WSFM, weird science and frickin' magic. The transdimensional interstellar technology will benefit humanity.
There has been tremendous disinformation.
The media is keeping secrets with the government.
These are lethal, vicious people. And I'm focused on exposing the extraordinary technologies that they want to keep secret. No aspect of life on Earth will be unaffected by it. Glad to be here.
You know, it's crazy times right now. We got a war going on.
Right.
And there's a lot of cry in the public for, you know, the energy crisis. People are suffering out there. The petrol's on the rise. And apparently there is technology that could change the world overnight. And that's what we got into in our latest documentary with you, Above Top Secret. So
right.
What's on the agenda, Dr. Stephen Greer? Is there any plans in the future that could change things, or is it going to, you know, go down a road that we're never going to be able to come back from?
Well, it's really up to a lot of people right now. But as you know, I've been working this issue for 32 years, and you know, the situation we're in now, on the brink of nuclear war and oil prices and shortages, very predictable because we've stayed in the game of fossil fuels for about 100 years longer than we needed to. And we can prove this. And this film, Above Top Secret, is a very important sort of overview, let's call it, of what these technologies are, what's behind UFO energy systems, propulsion systems. And the most important question, the question that's always asked of me when I brief someone in Washington, is the all-important why. Why is this being kept secret? That was the very first question from the director of the CIA that I briefed the first time, because he knew the subject was real. He knew that, quote, UFOs existed, had a sighting, but the CIA director didn't understand why he and the president were being denied access to these operations and projects, and why the extraordinary level of illegal secrecy would be imposed. So that was really the crux of that conversation, and that's what this Above Top Secret film is beginning to answer. We knew back when I first put together the recommendations for Clinton back in the ancient history, before the public knew the word disclosure project and what have you, that you know, we would get increasingly in a bad situation from the point of view of the environment, geopolitics, and the instability of the world because of our dependency on a handful of oil kleptocracies and oligarchs. And of course, here we are in 2022, exactly in that situation. So it's a really important matter. People think it's tangential to the situation in the world with Ukraine, Russia, other parts of the world. It is not. The entire geopolitical order is driven, quite frankly, by this black curse of oil, which, if that's the only energy system we could use, well, it'd be understandable. If all there was oil and solar power and windmills, and there's not enough of the latter two to run the planet right now, it would be understandable. But that's not the situation. The situation is that we absolutely have the solutions, but they're in highly classified, beyond black, above top secret projects, and we can prove that.
You know what's interesting, Dr. Stephen Greer, is, you know, when you're breaking down this whole idea of this technology being hidden, and there's so many walls being built up, and for, you know, our government to break that wall and get into basically call the black box, where, you know, everything could be fixed pretty much overnight. Seems that this wall is being built so high it's almost impossible to break down. Do we have strategy to break down these walls to, you know, maybe get access to these black budgets?
We're going to need help from the community out there. Why? Because a little bit of history here. And I know that when, for example, the so-called Davis memo about me briefing with Edgar Mitchell, Astronaut Mitchell, and some of my early military witnesses, Admiral Wilson, at the Pentagon. When I spoke of it years ago, I don't think people quite believed that the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff would be denied access to projects which should be under his purview and oversight and control. But he was. And that Davis memo proves it. And in fact, it very clearly states that he was threatened with demotion and frankly worse. Now, that was a result of our initially giving the Admiral very specific actionable intelligence from documents and facilities and sub-facilities such as S4 and other places, Lockheed Skunk Works locations, manufacturing places for the man-made UFOs, et cetera. And unfortunately, even though you would think the guy putting together the intelligence brief every day for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States would have all access to something like that, he had no access. The same was the situation for the director of the CIA that I briefed and the president. The same was true for the three-star general who was head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, General Patrick Hughes, who I spent a great deal of time briefing. He was denied access and actually ridiculed for even asking. Even though I have witnesses in our disclosure project who worked in super black, unacknowledged special access projects on this issue and were assigned to the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, which is, it's basically, the DIA is essentially like the CIA for military intelligence as opposed to civilian. And the same is true for members of the Senate Intelligence Committee I briefed years ago, the people who had been chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, very senior folks in the House who were on science and technology and government oversight, and on and on and on. So at a certain point, between 1993 or 92 and 1997, we had concluded that the people who the public and the media portray as running the U.S. government, they do on most issues. On this issue and some related ones, they do not. There's a transnational, not international, group that has enormous technologies way beyond what even people managing the black budget of the United States would know about or have access to. And so, and remember, Admiral Wilson admitted he had been involved in unacknowledged special access projects, off the books, deep black, but nothing that touched this issue. And when he tried to get inside that box, he was slapped down and pushed away while he was in that position. These are not retired people that I'm talking about having met with. I have met with some retired people. But in the whole time that, for example, the Minister of Defense of Canada, Hellyer, that I brought into this subject, and people like Minister of Defense Lord Hill Norton, with whom I met in England, who was a 5-star admiral, a sea lord, and had been head of the Ministry of Defense for the United Kingdom. The Minister of Defense for Australia that I met with at a secret meeting, I guess you'd call it, back in 2013 in Australia. None of these men, who you would think, okay, they're heads of the biggest, some of the biggest military operations in the world as their secretaries of defense or ministers of defense, that they would have access and have been read into or briefed. No, none of them were, not one. And they were not lying. So this is prima facie, in fact, proof of an illegal, unconstitutional, corrupt enterprise. And that's why we tell people who have been in these projects as, say, foot soldiers, technicians, engineers, tactical operators, corporate or intelligence or military. So if we were ever going to move this forward, it is absolutely right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's crazy is when we set out to make this film Above Top Secret, we kind of reached out to, the people that we felt most to be on the inside, James Goodall, Michael Stratt, D'Souza, and yourself. And you were gracious enough to get us over there to Virginia, and we met you in person. And that was interesting because when we were back at base editing this film, I became very angry just at the fact of how much has been hidden from us. And I expect a lot of people, when they watch Above Top Secret, are going to be very angry of how deeply suppressed we are in present day. And that being said, let's take a quick look at an exclusive peek at Above Top Secret. Take a
great.
look at this.
Some years ago, I was invited to go to an underground research facility in El Paso on the Mexican-American border. And this was a place where they were doing these sort of technologies that are trans-dimensional, but medical applications. Major stuff, technologies that literally, electromagnetic trans-dimensional technologies where they can, if someone had a missing limb, they can attach to the subtle body, the mystics call astral body, but that energy, like you have phantom pain, and regrow it. Here's the issue. The same technology that gives you that would give you free energy to run your house, because it's in that same, let's call it constellation of extraordinary technologies that they would want to keep secret. So there are a lot of spin-offs beyond energy, propulsion, and the environment that will benefit humanity once we can get the first level of this out, because it's unbelievable how backward even our medical technology is compared to what's possible. So that's also a very bit of good news.
This is why I've called for sort of a Marshall Plan for the planet for new energy and the environment that is supported and funded by individuals in an open source way, and not expecting, I think it's silly to expect the government of the United States or any other government to get behind doing something that brings out the most disruptive technologies in the history of the human race. Let's be blunt. But it also creates a new civilization, and it saves our future. So if this had been introduced slowly from the early 20th century, 100 years ago, to now, we'd be okay. But now we've run out of time because of what's happening to the biosphere, geopolitically, population boom. So in order to create enough change quickly enough, we're going to have to do something very different, very fundamentally different than what we've been doing.
So there's a sneak peek of Above Top Secret, and we got Dr. Stephen Greer with us. And, like I said, people should, basically get pissed off after they watch this in regards to this struggle that we're all trying to get to, disclosure.
Now, what I hope Above Top Secret will stimulate more of these whistleblowers and people who have information to come forward. Because when you learn, and honestly, as an emergency doctor, I never thought I'd be put in this situation, honestly. Taking care of shootings and stabbings and car wrecks were less traumatic than this. But I think that it's something that has reached the point where there are enough people in government. After our documentary Unacknowledged came out 4 or 5 years ago, and it ended up having 750 million people see it, things began to move and tilt where there were a lot of inquiries happening. There were some charlatans who surfaced who then provided disinformation to these folks. Now they realize they've been Zoomed, they've been gaslit, and they're reaching out to folks who can actually, provide accurate information and assessments. So that's what our job has been. Although, I want to be very clear so the conspiracy kooks out there don't go nuts. I don't work for anyone in the government. I'm not paid by anyone in the government or a corporation or anyone international or a covert program. This is a completely self-funded effort. The Disclosure Project has never been part of that system, and nor am I even now as I share this with you. Now, that's by design, because once you get pulled in that system, it's a slippery slope to end up at the bottom of, at the wrong end of a deal where you've lost your autonomy and your ability to be free, which I guard more than anything. Is our freedom.
And there's so many critics out there as well in regards to what you've been doing all these years. But let's take another quick look at an exclusive right here of Above Top Secret. Watch this.
This is one of the cautionary tale. When Stan Meyer's collection of technologies were acquired by this other entity, and I said whoever gets it, tell them they have to do it open source in front of the whole world. The whole world's going to be watching this technology being refined, developed, released, without any intellectual property holdback, without patent, because otherwise they're not going to survive their launch. I got this call a couple years later, who had ended up being the money behind that acquisition. And he says, these people are running for their lives. They are looking for an eco-friendly country that they can get to because they're being threatened in America. I said, you'd have to go to another star system. There's no place on this planet where the henchmen of these kind of Fourth Reich fascists won't find you. And they didn't want to let go of the greed and profit motive. They wanted to be the next Rockefellers of energy, you see. So that is the Achilles heel. Next thing I know, I meet with a guy in Orange County, California, who knew one of the people who was with that engineering team. And the man said this guy came in, was crying like a baby because every single one of them had been killed and the technology vanished.
There's a sea change here, because for years people in these governmental positions weren't interested. If they were interested, as I described over the last 30 years I've been involved, they would be stood down, threatened, blocked. Now we have people who understand that's the situation, but who are responsible for these areas, or should be, and who have the means to go the distance. So that is a very different situation. And that's why we need to have people who are serious folks, you know, a big network of folks out there, like you're going to have on the show tonight, working the system and finding people who want to come in through the back door. I have been very blunt in my meetings in the last few weeks in Washington that you are not, I will tell these folks, going to get anything through the front door, through the chain of command, through asking nicely. You're going to have to find ways to go around that dam. You're going to have to be the water that flows around those boulders and blocks. And that's what we have to do. And that's the strategy that I've been working for, you know, almost 30 years. You know, at the time that I first started this, I didn't think that's what we'd have to do. I honestly thought, you know, in back in the day when I thought there was an intact constitution and chain of command, I could provide enough specific information to the chief executive, the president, and his folks. They could make inquiries, the doors would open for them, and they would do the right thing. Well, and then bring the appropriate information out on this. Well, that didn't happen because the doors never opened. They were blocked at every turn. And so, I remember even when John Podesta left the Obama administration to run Hillary Clinton's campaign, he tweeted out, my biggest disappointment all these years in government is not having been able to effect disclosure on the UFO issue. And he had been chief of staff for Clinton back in the day when, you know, we were doing a lot of this. And then subsequently put together Obama's cabinet, then ran Hillary's campaign, and on and on and on. And, you know, he never got read into this and never got access, even though we provided a lot of information to people like him. And his corollary in the Bush administration, you know, Andy Card, chief of staff, we gave him an entire huge briefing document handed to him in person by one of our whistleblowers, military witnesses. And that didn't get him in the door either, because the guy running that shop was Dick Cheney, who was blocking and deceiving President Bush. And we know this. So, you know, this is it's very complicated, unfortunately. And people don't like nuanced and complicated stories. They want simplistic conspiracy theories and rubbish. I don't have the luxury of living in that fantasy world off the internet. Neither should you anymore, or anyone else on this team. But I think that we have to realize what the lay of the land is. You have to deal with the hand that you've been dealt. And whether it's us, the public, we're in the same boat, really, as these leaders in our country. And the only ones who are in that system and right into them are people who are part and know they're part of a corrupt enterprise, at least the leadership. Now, where the sweet spot is, let me be clear, are not necessarily the leadership of this group, the Majority Intelligence Committee, as it's been called, MAGIC. It's the folks who've been on retrieval teams. It's folks who've been out in the field or have worked in the skunk works underground, or who have been in S4, who have been at Dugway up in Utah, who have been in various corporations and Booz Allen Hamilton and Lockheed Skunk Works and Northrop Grumman and others. These folks who have worked this task know a lot, and there are thousands of them, and they're afraid. And I understand their fear. But now we have an opportunity to do something about it. Above Top Secret, I think, I hope, will stimulate a debate, but also will bring out of that system another whole, let's say, generation of disclosure-related whistleblowers. And if they can come into our system, we now have a place for them to direct their information that can result in change. And that's, what I'm doing this for. I'm not doing this for muckraking or gossip. I'm doing this to affect an enormous change, because the implications of the change are you can't even begin to calculate. Imagine having technologies that would at once solve all the environmental problems, most medical problems, end dependency on oil, change geopolitical dynamic that's leading to all these problems all over the world, and would give all people in the world the ability to live in an abundant, prosperous way with quote unquote free, so-called zero-point quantum vacuum energy systems, which are touched on in this film, Above Top Secret. It's an entirely new world. And it's one that's been forestalled and been prevented from evolving for over 100 years. So this is what I call it's the whole lost century of social and technological evolution. And with it, I suspect spiritual evolution of our species, because people are still grubbing around trying to eke out a subsistence living. 3 billion people on the planet, by the way, still get their ability to cook their food by chopping down trees, making charcoal, and burning wood, which is what's happening to all the old growth forest, a lot of it. 3 billion with a B, almost half the population of the world. So we can do better than this, but we're not going to do better than this with the zero-sum game of fossil fuels or the low energy output and very expensive energy output of just wind and solar. These new technologies that are truly space age and amazing, that will give us the world of our dreams and will help create a new civilization for our children and my 11 grandchildren. And so
I know, yeah, absolutely. You're pretty busy with the grandchildren as of recent time, but let's get back, and we're going to be. Let's tell everybody we have an entire guest panel sitting in the background, and they're going to be joining us in just a few moments. We've got Michael Schratt, military aerospace historian, along with James C. Goodall, also a historian, aviation expert, and John D'Souza, retired FBI agent, known as the X-Men, with all kinds of insight. He's also an author, but we're going to get this discussion going here in just a moment. But let's get into this thing behind me right here, the Tic Tac. It's on the Above Top Secret poster. Some people are, from some of the sources we're hearing, and I'm sure there's a rumbling going on. And I just wanted to ask you, without giving up too much, without, getting in trouble, but it seems to me that our government has created this false narrative of the threat, and what's really going on is a private corporation has developed this technology, and maybe this private entity, this private company, is getting too powerful, even more powerful than our own government's assets. And this is kind of a dangerous game if we have a private entity that could run circles around our jet fighters with technology that's owned by a private citizen, possibly in our country.
It's neither government, as you and I think of it, nor a private corporate. It's a hybrid of the two. It's a complete commingling of what Eisenhower called the military industrial, meaning corporate, complex. That is the truth. Eisenhower knew what he was talking about, absolutely. And he was betrayed by those interests. Now, we have the same situation now. There's not much that's changed since Eisenhower gave that speech in January of 1961 as he was leaving office of the president. after 8 years. Unfortunately, I would like to say it has, but it has only gotten worse in the sense that the consolidation of power, center of gravity, has devolved out of legal constitutional oversight into this hybrid entity that is part governmental, but beyond black, beyond top secret, and highly centered in corporate interests. Now, if you study the history of fascism, the classical definition of fascism is the corporate takeover or corruption and influence of government to the benefit of the corporate entities and private financial and other entities. That is what the definition of fascism is as it evolved in the 1800s and early 1900s, which then led eventually to the buffoonery and tragedy of Mussolini and Hitler and others. But that's the definition. So we're really talking about a continuation of that proclivity for both corrupt interests in government and corporations working together. But it's reached such a point of power that it greatly exceeds the power of what you just called the government of the United States. So I think people have to be, I mean, again, this is, it's shocking, it's disturbing, it happens to be the truth. I know that this is through the looking glass here, that a retired emergency doctor working this system for 30 years would have, and the people I'm working with who are substantial sources of intelligence on this subject who come forward, that we become the de facto source of information for people that should be able to hit a button and pick up the phone and get all this information. So it's bizarre, but it's the truth. And unfortunately, I've explained this to the public since the 90s. I don't think people have believed it. I really don't give a rat's ass if people believe it or not. This is the truth. And eventually people come around and realize this is the truth. But I don't think that it can be my concern. I'm not interested in salacious gossips, and I'm not running for the mayor of crazy town ufology. We really have a very important project here that has to continue. The Disclosure Project just was the project that we named after Project Starlight. We get into the Clinton Library, which was the initial effort by people that I was working with back in the early and mid 90s to provide information to Congress and to the president, hoping they would do something. But they weren't ready, and now they're ready. And I think that this is a very good opportunity. It's a big potential breakthrough, but there's one hell of a lot of work to do. And we're going to need everyone's help. I want to be very blunt. I mean, this is, I don't have at my disposal $1 billion budget and armies of people to do this. This is something that's being done with like some of the folks you just named that will be joining me in a moment, out of the goodness of their hearts and their devotion to the truth and to making a big change happen that could really fix most of the huge problems facing humanity.
Absolutely. And we got the major players in the documentary Above Top Secret. But speaking of that, let's take a look at the trailer and then get to the panel members of this incredible documentary. Let's roll the trailer right now.
If the crash retrievals are true, then all bets are off.
It's very hard for people to get their minds around where the real power is. And it's not at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The reality is something much more stark.
They've been working on this for 60, 70, perhaps 80 years.
The reason why the government is talking about these UFOs now, they're getting ready for the next level of war.
Are these objects a national security concern?
They're proffering a narrative of a national security threat that doesn't exist.
I call them alien reproduction vehicles. They're made by private corporations somewhere on this planet.
Technology from Roswell from 1947 has largely been held back from us.
Portal technology, teleportation, whatever you can imagine, it's already been done.
The biggest secrets are not the zero-point energy and electrogravitics. It's the science of consciousness. All their communication systems are moving through the consciousness field and are thought actuated. The people at the CIA call it WSFM, weird science and frickin' magic. The transdimensional interstellar technology will benefit humanity.
There has been tremendous disinformation.
The media is keeping secrets with the government.
These are lethal, vicious people. And I'm focused on exposing the extraordinary technologies that they want to keep secret. No aspect of life on Earth will be unaffected by it.
Then let's bring in the incredible cast of this documentary right now with Michael Schratt. We got John D'Souza, the X-Men, and we're going to be bringing Jim Goodall in just a moment. But before we get to Jim, Michael, John D'Souza, Dr. Greer's here. You guys, appreciate you guys joining us. I know, John, I think it's the first time you've met Dr. Greer, so.
Yes, it's great, Dr. Greer, to finally meet you.
Thank you. Good to meet you
amazing
too.
Stuff. It is a great privilege and honor for me, seeing as how my work over the years has intersected with your own on so many different occasions, and it's been it's a real pleasure and an honor, and I'm really happy to welcome you also to Arizona for your big event that is going on April 8th, 9th, and 10th in Scottsdale, Arizona, the CE5 that is going to be going on there. That's going to be really amazing event. I'm really looking
and if folks can't be there in person, you can webinar it for the whole weekend, and it'll be a lot of fun. And all those dates, 8th, 9th, and 10th, inclusive all the way through Sunday night, we'll be out on the Native American land that it's very sacred doing what we're doing, which is more the citizens diplomacy effort end of what we do with CE5 Contact. And actually, I'll be talking about this film during that whole conference. And,
that'll be awesome.
Yeah, it's a powerhouse of a film, and getting all your guys' participation was something that was kind of a dream come true. We're asking big questions, but when we give you these questions, you guys give us so much information, and that's what's incredible, that we're finding answers to our questions. And then again, the frustration, we could feel it with all you gentlemen, that this fight's been going on for a long time, and you guys been veterans in this field, and that's the major appreciation. Right here, Michael Schratt with his new YouTube channel, Blue Room Media, top-notch investigative reporting on the history of UFOs. And appreciate you, Michael, for joining us tonight.
It's good to be with all of you. Absolutely.
Yeah, Michael Schratt is an indispensable resource and source of great inside information, specific details that actually are more important than I think Michael realizes, significantly more important. And I think that people who've lived working on this, toiling in this field for so long, greatly overestimate the people who are in the system, not in the above top secret world, but in the normal system, what they have access to, what they know. And so I think we have to also go forward with a sense of compassion that, we need to put together and organize the information that's very solid, that's not speculative, in a form and in a way that they can understand, and then also put it up through the chain of command and it can be digested, because this is, you all know this, who worked this, this is drinking from a fire hose.
You know what? I don't want to be the host in this show. I just kind of want to throw it around in a conversation. But let's start it off with these documents that were recently dropped. As of the Congress had their top secret documents. They released the Nothing Burger a few months ago, and we only got a few pages, and it wasn't really nothing to it. But now there's new paperwork that's been out via John Greenwald, and we went over it recently. But the problem is 90% or 85% of the documents, maybe 95%, it's just totally redacted information. What I know, they're afraid of some of the technology behind retrieving, or, well, I'm going to say it here. I've received some information in regards to the redacted paperwork. I have a source apparently who's seen the non-redacted portion, and we only got a little bit of detail, but apparently there's a photograph or some film of a satellite that has captured an unidentified flying object. But the problem is they don't want to release it because of the technology that it was taken with, the optics. And
Sure.
they say if they release this photograph, it's going to jeopardize national security.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the first concern. The second one, which they say more importantly, is that this image is so provocative that it would change maybe our consciousness as a civilization, that we can't handle it. So, John, what's your thoughts on that? Obviously, the government has footage, film of these craft.
Yeah.
Why are they so vague with these videos? And is it really, in your opinion, that we can't handle it as a human race?
Well, I was just watching a previous speech of Dr. Greer, where he actually predicted perfectly what would happen with the June report that was from the DNI, and he actually just went over what he just said in an encapsulation, where he said people recognize that the DNI, Director of National Intelligence, well, his clearance must be so high, must be so universal that he can see everything that we cannot see. And nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. Because whether you're talking about the Senate Committee on National Security or whatever, or you're talking about the DNI, these are compartmentalized programs that are in their own scope and protected. And there is, and as we saw, the final report from the DNI that went over to the Senate Committee and to many other places ended up really not having anything in it of any value. And we find that in many parts of government where they pretend to have these incredible clearances. Speaking of above, Top Secret, the movie, they just don't have the special access programs that they pretend to have, because as we know, these are programs that the congressmen, the senators, even the president himself can try to walk into, and they will be locked out. They will be locked out of these things.
And a little insight on that in terms of, again, I'm always trying to humanize. People get demonized because people don't appreciate what it's like to walk in their shoes. So let me talk about walking in the shoes of some of these folks. And this is an example. When you're, say, the director of the CIA, and you make inquiries and you're denied access, and you're being denied access to things that you found some sources telling you that exist, no public official, no DNI, no president, no senator wants to get up in front of the public and say, well, the emperor has no clothes. The Constitution's been eviscerated. I don't have access to things that are of this importance. It would diminish the office of the president. It would diminish the institution of the Congress. And so I've had these conversations, and that's why it's so terrifying. And so it's not that they're being duplicitous. It's that they're afraid of the consequences. Not that people, not what you were referring to, Blake, but the people are going to go crazy in the streets because we're not alone in the universe. The majority of Americans already believe we're being visited and that we're not alone in the universe. I think it's more of these sort of issues, because that is terrifying, what I just said. And I think that you put yourself in the shoes of one of these people and you find out that there's a lead, titanium ceiling that you can't move through, even though you thought you were managing the black budget of the United States, even though you were the oversight, even though you're in this executive position in either the executive branch with the president, the director of national intelligence, or what have you. That's not something anyone wants to talk about for reasons that are quite obvious and understandable. On the other hand, look, I talk to people who had been in the skiff and saw what was presented that Blake just referred to. The method, the things that end up getting redacted often are method, sources, things like you're referring to. They don't want to tip their hand to an adversary what our actual imaging capabilities are on the NRO satellites or what have you. And that's completely understandable. Most of those things that are redacted aren't substantive in what people think are there. It's not like, because it's not like there's some mother lode of information on the ET issue or even on the so-called alien reproduction vehicles, the aerospace end of engineering that Michael can speak to so expertly. That's not, that's usually not what's being redacted at all. But to people on the outside looking at it, it looks fishy. It's more of these other issues.
Yeah, it looks guilty as hell with all the wasted black ink they're doing with these redacted papers. It's like a slap in the face.
But again, think about this. When I've worked with these folks, they have shared with me what's in those. So I think that we have to understand that this is infinitely more screwed up, unfortunately, I hate to say that, in terms of governmental procedures, oversight, and dare I say, the operation of the rule of law on this than people think. But it can be fixed. What we're trying to do now, the initiative we have now, is to fix it. But it's going to take some quite wise and calm, cool heads to do it.
If I've seen a discussion panel crew right here, this is pretty much the top of the line right now. We've got Jim Goodall, who's just joined us.
Oh, hey, Jim.
How's it going?
Good to have you, Jim.
Yeah. Michael, John, Dr. Greer, cousin brothers. I mean, you have the brain trust right here, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, wow, it's great to have everybody all in here. Brett's here with me as well, and he's probably going to get some questions in just a second. But wow, what an accomplishment, everybody, that we were able to get this documentary out. We were able to get it in a way to, I think the public is going to be amazed by what they see and the knowledge they're going to get. But working with all of you was just, again, it was so liquid, and the way it just flowed and the information and how we put it together, my brother and I, and editing, it was satisfying, but it's frustrating as well, just because of, again, this technology that's being hidden. Hey, Jim, we're just getting into the discussion in regards to basically, can the public handle it? There's been so much information. These Hollywood movies have been making these extraterrestrials look like the evil ones. Maybe E.T. was the only safe movie out there as far as dealing with ET. Maybe they should make more ET movies. I'm not sure, but if you ask me, if our government showed us a photograph of some extraterrestrial craft that looked pretty insane and said we're not alone, straight up, and the public would know, there would be some anxiety behind it. Like, what is their agenda? Being so brainwashed watching all these horror movies with extraterrestrials. Jim, would you be able to handle it no matter what the craft looked like?
Oh, absolutely. Or even, I mean, if all of a sudden, if I'm walking in the back of my, out behind my house at night, and all of a sudden one of these characters or creatures or ETs were to approach me, and they're pretty bizarre looking, I don't know how I'd react, but in broad daylight, if they were to land one at Tucson International or Davis Monthan, and I was invited, I would be thrilled. I mean, but there are people who cannot deal with even the thought of we're not alone, and I honestly believe if they were hostile, you and I, the five of us, would not be having this discussion right now, because we'd be under their heel of their big, knob nail boot, telling us what we're going to do, how we're going to think, what we're going to eat, and if you don't like it, we're going to feed you to the wolves. So, no, I have no fear from ET. And again, if in fact, if they were hostile, we'd have known this a long time ago. I mean, there wouldn't have been a Civil War, there wouldn't have been a Revolutionary War, there wouldn't have been World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and the insanity is going on right now.
Right. Well, no, I 100% agree, and I think that the fear factor that's been pushed out there is a way of people being shut down, because fear shuts down the mind. It shuts down the spirit. Fear overrides rational thought. And it's a very clever thing to use. And demagogues and tyrants throughout history have used that tactic. And I think they've used it very well. And I say very well in a negative way on this subject, on the public, through the movies and what have you. And when we released Cosmic Hopes on July 4th of 2021, our purpose in that was to expose. In fact, I just interviewed a man today who was working in a very compartmented operation with this issue, who was personal witness to a man-made sort of triangular, truncated cutoff on one end, triangular electromagnetic field propulsion craft that then released 3 grays that proceeded to try to abduct him. It was a very important case, and he knew that the craft and these creatures were man-made, and they were all moving in unison and rather robotically. I said, "Oh yeah, I know physicists who worked on developing those creatures, and these are the ones that are always on the cover of books and movies and movie posters that look like the classic stereotypical alien." In point of fact, that's a counterintelligence operation, and we know it, and we're providing that detail of information to the people in the government who are looking into this, because they don't know what to make of it. And I think that that's part of well, it began in the early 50s, the so-called psychological warfare effort on this matter. And it went from sort of a clumsy stagecraft using early man-made aircraft that looked like UFOs, and guys that were short or had some kind of appearance that could then be augmented with, stagecraft and makeup to scare people thinking they were alien. So now these very advanced kind of robotic nanobio machines. We don't have time to go into that. That, there are a number of people I work with who've been in those programs, not only tactically using them on innocent civilians, but have also been in places where they built them and made them. So this is one of the problems with the whole UFO subculture and the public, is that it's 9 parts in 10 stagecraft created by counterintelligence operations, and we have to separate the wheat from the chaff on all that.
Michael Schretz, the investigator here, in regards to the historical evidence, dates back over 100 years, and these eyewitnesses have a lot of things in common, where some of these craft that have been historically documented seem to be man-made. Rivets, bolts, electrical systems. We have pipings, coolant systems underneath the craft. What's your thoughts on what Greer just said and kind of the discussion overall? But again, this man-made element, people, have been misled by the major media that it's a threat. We don't know what they are. We don't know. We can't possibly do these kind of maneuvers or this technology is out of our hands. But then again, there's these reports that go back decades of these craft that seem man-made. What's your thoughts on it? Is it something that we maybe have, figured it out?
Well, the situation is as follows, and it's reached a point now where it's seamless, and anything short of the physical evidence pertaining to the crash retrievals, and we're just spinning our wheels. We can no longer afford these CE1 cases where it's a light in the sky. We really need to progress forward with the crash retrieval evidence, and that's what's going to move this field forward. Anything less than that, we're just spinning our wheels. And I'll give you an example. We still can't even get the 1957 Gordon Cooper Edwards Air Force Base film released after all this time. And here we've got the Defense Department dripping these documents over decades of time. We just don't have time for this. We really need to get down to business. So
right.
Time is of the essence. Yeah.
Right. And that's why we need specific, actionable intelligence.
Correct.
And people who've been on the inside to give these investigators and folks I'm working with the precision with what is. For example, and I don't want to mention the gentleman's name, But there was a man who, from 2002 to 2012, was in the technology management office in the Pentagon subbasement. And, he was in charge of an investigation. I won't go into the details here, but this is being handed off to these folks in the government that I've been meeting with. And out at Fort Sill, and near Lawton, Oklahoma, he was escorted into and can name and put the people exactly in the location of where one of these retrieved extraterrestrial vehicles is located, and what they were working on and studying at that particular site for that particular vehicle. That is what I'm talking about. So I want to give that as a specific example. This is fairly new intelligence, and I think that we need to all open up our networks and have folks come forward who can provide exactly what you, Michael, are referring to. Now, I'm not saying that anyone, that we're not going to go in and sort of invade that deep underground military base or in SCIF. The other thing is that because these projects have been declared unconstitutional and illegal, and we can prove they are, absolutely can prove it at this point. I mean, there's a parade of folks that I met with from 92 forward who absolutely should have had a need to know and had a constitutional right to be read into these projects.
Again, what you guys are offering to the public via this documentary, Above Top Secret, is priceless. Let's take a quick look at another sneak peek right here, exclusive of Above Top Secret. Take a look at this.
Most people think that the U.S. government builds stuff. They contract. It's called WFO, work for others. And in 1993, I was at the Wrigley Mansion in Phoenix. They wanted me to come to a meeting very late at night. He says, look, if you want to deal with this issue of these technologies, the UFO issue, you don't need to talk to the president, the CIA director. They don't know anything, and they're not going to know anything. You should be talking to people like us. We're the ones who are running the WFO. We're tied into certain, I'm quoting, orders of Jesuit priests that are working on the technology transfer. We have the supercomputers that back up the banking system, and where we can get a lot of money just from transactions where they're odd amounts. This sort of hybrid entity, partially covert, unacknowledged government programs, but a big part of that is then outsourced to big corporations, covert contractors, and other organizations. So that's kind of what developed in the post-World War II era, and it's how the operation runs.
John D'Souza comes in, and let me tell you, he brings the heat on, and
Right.
He's calling out the major media on the lies being spread in regards to the disinformation and the horsemen speaking. It's obvious that there's these actors that are being put forward into the major media. Apparently right now you don't see them anymore in the major media for some reason.
We released the Cosmic Hoax. They took the thunder. The wind got taken out of their sails. Yeah.
There you go. And the major media doesn't want to touch them. Now they're going to the bottom gutter of YouTube and talking to these YouTube channels with the least amount of subscribers and getting their airplay there and creating these false rumors out there saying that Dr. Greer is paying all these YouTubers off and we're all under Dr. Greer's payroll. And the paranoia behind this is almost embarrassing. But then John D'Souza basically does the same thing in Above Top Secret, and there's this point in there where it just ratchets it up to a level, and people should start to wake up that some of these people that we were holding on a pedestal has been kicked out from underneath them, and now they're just kind of gutter feeding on the bottom feeders in YouTube here. It's quite entertaining. John, what do you think? Why aren't these guys? Obviously, Cosmic Hoax destroyed the credibility of some of these people, but is the media ever going to shape up on this and get kind of maybe some of the public's point of view versus just these actors that are put forward on the pedestal?
These are pretty typical CIA shop tactics that they are employing. We have many actors like Elizondo, who I believe is a CIA contractor, and he's out there. But we are still we are still in the phases of what I have heard referred to as Operation Failsafe. It's just a general term that's used by people in national security for these things. I deal in I deal in uh, it's it's rough to say it, but I deal with rumors from the national security branches, so that they are not breaking their secrecy oaths when they talk to each other and they talk to me. These are rumors, these are raw data, and it's because we're not we're not violating any secrecy oaths by talking about these. It's just raw information, and anyone who has worked in national security knows that there are times when a simple rumor can save your life. Well, we're in that situation here because we're in the first phases of Operation Failsafe, the final operation for the cabal to try to strike back at our civilization. And it's the operation that was predicted by Werner von Braun, of course, and by others as well. And the first phase, we're still in the first phase of this operation, which is the acquiring of media, political, and valuable assets to work with them. And there's a long line of politicians, of media, of even alternative media figures who we used to trust, who are online to become part of this operation. And it's horrible. It's disgusting because they are people who used to be trusted, and now they are working for the darkness as we lurch our way forward towards what I have called fake alien invasion. That will be this because the dark Pentagon, what I call them the dark Pentagon, U.S. Pentagon. They are elements of the Pentagon that actually have these tic tacs. I refer to them as tic tacs. These vehicles that possibly have some anti-gravitic qualities to them, that have been reverse engineered and otherwise, but they are in the possession of the U.S. military. Well, the dark parts of the U.S. military, I'll put it that way, and they are looking to use them. And now we're going into a more advanced phase, like Michael Schratt was talking about. I believe that we are now going into a period where these tic tacs are going to have more aggressive encounters with vehicles and people all over the world, and we're in that phase right now because they need to ratchet up the fear, because they need to push it up, and it's coming. A few months ago, we had one of the tic tacs was in a cylinder shape and actually sailed across the front of an airliner. The airliner pilot called it out. It just came right.
Yeah, Jim Goodall broke that news with us.
Yeah.
We broke that news on Third Phase of Moon thanks to Jim Goodall with his contact with the ham radio operator that picked that communication up with the American Airlines pilot, and we broke that on Third Phase of Moon that same day, and it took 5 days for the major media to actually break that story. And we were trying to share it to all the major media, saying, "Hey, here's the recording. This is how we obtained it," and they didn't want to touch it. And then the FBI, for some reason, got involved with it, and we reached out to the FBI and said, "Hey, look, we're the ones that broke this story. We have a contact who's the actual ham operator. Let's help. Let's find out what this is." And then the next day, we received an inside document from Southwest Airlines of this warning to all the pilots that something was going to happen that day, and if you see anything unusual, report it to Tower. And of course, it was some kind of secret program, but they're not telling us what they're exactly doing, but they're giving people the heads up that, hey, look, something might happen, and if you pick up on this, report to Tower. And it's weird how the communication was broken down in that recording, but that's a whole different story. Jim, that was an incredible breaking news that we collaborated with when he woke up. We woke up that morning and he had that audio to us. We're like, man, this is big.
And it was just a chance encounter that everybody was able to record it. And I mean, it blew him away is when he immediately called me and said, "Guess what I have?" And within about 20 minutes, it was off to the brothers.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured you'd
By
have.
the way, if somebody could give me that tape, it'd be useful. I could, don't assume that the folks that you think are supervising the government on these sort of issues know any of the things you're talking about. Michael, same with your situation. I mean, I think, Michael, you could speak to how long you're historically have gone back that there have been what would be called man-made UFOs operational that people have seen.
Yeah, we've got the historical archives from, I would say, at least 5 different centers around the country. And what we kind of spoke about before is they're all coming up with these same patterns. Mm-hmm. The tubes, the pipes, the cylinders, the low frequency electrical humming noises, mm-hmm. the buzzing sounds like a transformer or a sewing machine, mm-hmm. testing on certain days, color patterns on the lights that are inconsistent with an ET craft. It's just showing you that there's a man-made component to this, and it's seamless. It's seamless at this point.
Well, and you've already talked about the so-called alien reproduction vehicle that Mark McCandlish at the Disclosure Project showed, and that Brad Sorensen had seen at the Norton Air Force Base air show that Frank Carlucci, Secretary of Defense for Reagan, was there, that those components were from the Mercury era, Gordon Cooper's era.
What's crazy, too, is that the people that are, I guess Lou said it, and there's people that are saying that we wouldn't destroy any evidence and just throw it away prior to 2004. They only want to deal with 2004 and up. And I guess that's part of these briefs to the Congress, that they don't even want to touch anything prior to 2004. And
that's not going to happen anymore. That's old history, my friend. Trust me on that. Okay. I do want to comment, however, on this issue about the so-called Tic Tac and other. I don't know, Jim, that those are necessarily accidental. One of the things that has happened, and of course this is how you create the specter of a threat. Again, the whole threat assessment, what's been in the media and what's been proffered to people in the Senate and elsewhere, because of these objects, quote unquote, invading or impinging on classified airspace or near aircraft that are either civilian or military. Those craft that are man-made have done so deliberately because they want to trigger a threat matrix. In other words, they want to be able to say, see how dangerous these objects are to safety of the air, or they're in a classified area and they're not ours. And I know from talking with folks in Washington, there have been people who've gone up on Capitol Hill and at the Pentagon and elsewhere and in the White House who have flat out said, we, as humans, don't have anything that can move and fly like that or look like that. And that means that they're saying that off-world, otherworldly, quote-unquote, alien objects have been in classified airspace threatening our operations, or even civilian, like this American Airlines situation, aircraft, when in reality, those have been man-made, deep black, unacknowledged, special access projects above top secret, whatever you want to call them, that were done not accidentally usually. Some have been accidents, like the Cash Landrum event. That was a mishap. But that was ours, by the way. And but mostly those have been done when they've gone deliberately in broad daylight or at night into classified airspace, because the people who are the pilots for a jet or an air traffic controller, or name whatever person in the conventional military and intelligence, they haven't been read in to what these objects are. Therefore, they're completely convinced it cannot be ours. And that is dangerous, because that has been played, that trial balloon has been sent all through the media and all the way up to the White House and all the way up to the top Senate oversight committees. And it's a ruse. It's a deception. And I think this is very dangerous, because to what end? It's exactly what Mr. D'Souza was talking about. That this is to an end of creating the specter of a threat, which doesn't exist, but which would be very convincing. And they're ratcheting up that threat matrix. And that's why these events have happened and have happened historically, because they can be very convincing. And to people who think that they know everything going on at the Lucky Skunk Works or at Northrop Grumman or at this Air Force base or what have you, it's not within their worldview that this could possibly be human when it is. And by the way, the actual extraterrestrial vehicles, they don't have bolts, they don't have washers, they don't have seams, they don't have rivets. We know this. But unfortunately, that kind of detail, which seems like that would be quite obvious, isn't known by the people who everyone thinks would know, should know. And I think that's where there's this big gap that we have to close in the knowledge, because knowledge is power.
And one of the problems I've run into, because I was doing a number of calls, I met most of the people that have access to this stuff when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
I turn 77 tomorrow, which means most of the people that I have dealt with are dead.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. I got an email from Bill Fox's daughter. Foxy had almost 40 years of the Skunk Works. And he was one of the first persons to tell me, he said, hey, we have things out in the desert that would make George Lucas envious. But I said, well, how about these things are flying through the sky at thousands of miles an hour, and they make a 90-degree turn.
Mm-hmm.
He said, as long as they weren't manned, we have that capability. And this is back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He said, and he said the technology used in the Copperhead, was it flyable artillery shell? I mean, it'll go to a specific point on GPS coordinates. Those things. That's 400 Gs when they get blasted out of the cannon. But Foxy said that he has seen testing where an unmanned object, mm-hmm. going at an extremely high rate of speed, and it stops in the dime or makes a 90-degree turn or does a 180 so mm-hmm. fast that if there was anything in there that wasn't tied down, it would end up continue to go forward as you're going into reverse. So that the technology, that conventional technology exists. I mean, I know I think I mentioned it to you. I know I mentioned it to the Cousin brothers, that I actually, face-to-face with Jeff Babion, asked him how much alien technology is used in any of the Skunk Works programs. And I think he was very, very straightforward when he said, I have no knowledge. And when you're looking straight into somebody's eyes, unless they're a politician or a newscaster or a bunch of lion rat bastards, it's just, when you're looking at, I mean, I'm from the distance I am away from my monitor right now, looking right at his eyes and say, okay, how much alien technology? And he said, it doesn't mean it didn't pass through here, mm-hmm. but my job is to look to the future, not look to the past. Mm-hmm. So he said, it may be buried so deep when they created it, I will never have an opportunity nor have a need. Now he's retiring as of April 1st. And this new guy going in, and he's going to be the proud recipient of one of my Blackbird books, because I know that's what greased the skids for me to get into see Jeff. But there's the high-speed turning technology existed a long time ago. Another thing that the same gentleman who gave me the recording of the American Airlines Tic Tac flying by him. He's the one who alerted me back, it's either 2015 or 2016, near Glenwood, New Mexico, which is right on the border of Arizona mm-hmm. and New Mexico. And there was a TFR issued, 30 miles from this area. You can't fly, but the TFR was never listed officially anywhere. Mm. Whatever the object was, it was reported that it hit the ground at 3,000 miles an hour. Now, I did talk to the fire chief in Glenwood. He said shortly after the event, said we had so many, white Dodge vans going out there. They had cranes, they had a flatbed truck. They were in there about 2 or 3 days, and it's a wilderness area. It's a primitive camping area. Now, Stu Brown and we went back 20 some odd miles. I mean, I know we were in Arizona by the time we decided to turn around. They had a tractor and trailer with a 40 or 50 foot flatbed behind it coming out of the area. There's where we went, there's no way that a truck that long could make any of the turns. So I've been trying to get together, a group, some of them out of Amarillo, at least Stu Brown out of Albuquerque, and we're gonna go in there. We need someone who has a commercial grade drone with high resolution, and we're gonna just start scanning the area. Because even after 7 or 8 years, something crashed into the ground. First of all, there's a road going to the recovery site. Mm-hmm. And we haven't been able to find that yet. And COVID, put the kibosh on it.
Right.
You got to get out there and do it, Jim. If you need any help, let us know. Hey, we're with the panel, and we've got a few minutes left. But this above top secret and working with you guys has been incredible, and I know a lot of people are going to be blown away when they watch this. I think I got another exclusive clip for everybody, so let's roll it and take a look at this, everyone.
But governments can't die. So we need to find other incentives for bureaucracy to adapt and improve. The technology revolution has transformed organizations across the private sector. But not ours, not fully, not yet. We are, as they say, tangled in our anchor chain. Our financial systems are decades old. According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
Well, you don't just have 2, 3, 10 trillion dollars vanish. There's a whole system in place, and it comes from many different budgets. And then a big part of the funding comes from private endeavors. So it isn't just government, it's private and government together. So I call this a hybrid entity that's neither strictly government nor strictly private. And interestingly, from a secrecy point of view, as a private entity, corporate or citizen, penetrate these projects, it's top secret national security. Most of the work being done on this are private corporations, Northrop, Raytheon, the old E-Systems, EG&G, and they'll say, it's proprietary, you see? So if you come from the government, it's proprietary. If you come from corporate or civilian, it's top secret government. So they kind of wall it off, they play that game. It's like the Truman Show. If you look at that old show, Jim Carrey is playing this guy who his whole life is raised in this sort of fake set and wakes up one day and realizes, my whole life has been this staged thing. So I think most people don't realize we're living in somebody's big Truman Show here. The controllers, I call them, who orchestrate these things. And so we kind of have to go, we need to have that Jim Carrey moment where we kind of wake up and realize, we've been in a crazy Truman Show here for 70 years since World War II. And get real. That's what we need to do.
Above Top Secret, again, the link is below. It's streaming on all platforms. And like I say in the subtext over there, the technology behind disclosure. And I think you're going to get a little bit of that in this documentary because this technology is superior. And I think the whole idea of Dr. Greer, is to have this free energy. It's about time, get off the fossil fuels. Again, the propulsion behind these craft, we're going to have to wait a little bit before we could utilize the propulsion because of certain dangers and the elements behind these craft moving at 30,000 miles per hour. So, that's another
and faster than that. I want to point out that, and by the way, just as a point of fact on this, there are objects that are man-made that move in these right-hand turns at those speeds. There are ones that can be manned, but they had to develop a way to control for 1G on board. So it didn't matter. So you have a field, view it as being in a bubble around itself, and it's moving through space at X speed, 100,000 kilometers an hour. It makes a right-hand turn. But what's felt on board is 1G stable. That can be done.
I am going to go spend a day or two with Bob Lazar.
Oh, wow.
I already and I'm going to try to. I mean, his function. The movie that Jeremy put together was a promotion for Jeremy. There was not that much of Bob in it, and I'm going to see if I can convince him, one way or the other, to sit down with the group here. I mean, it doesn't have to be me. It could be Michael. It could be the cousin brothers. It could be all five of us go to his place and sit down and.
That'd be something.
Yes, it would. Mm-hmm. Yes, it would.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work on it. I don't know if I can pull it off, but I've known him for 35 years, so we'll see what we can do.
Hey,
I mean, I'm in on the long haul. I mean, I know I'm going to live to be over 100, so I'm going to be one of the troopers.
There you go.
And when you guys come out from Hawaii, let's do it. Let's do a brainstorming on going into Glenwood, New Mexico. You have your drone.
We got a drone,
and it works great. Yeah. And let's survey the area. Let's put a grid together and let's go in there. I know about where they went in.
Let's do it. We could take a look.
Did that event, did you get any indication that it was an extraterrestrial or a man-made that malfunctioned?
The fire marshal that I talked to, he said they came in the dead of night. They arrived. I mean, it was like in the movies. And it was a huge procession. They were in the area for, I think they said 3 days. Mm-hmm. When they finally came out. There was a flatbed truck. There was something covered. It wasn't very big. Of course, you hit the ground at 3,000 miles an hour. If you're long, you're going to be really short by the time they dig you up.
Well, the reason I asked that is that, I've interviewed and met with a few guys, and one recently who was on a retrieval team that was deployed for both retrieving the man-made ones that malfunctioned and the extraterrestrial one. Now, so the question is, well, which was this? Maybe there's not enough data to answer.
When they headed out, this is per the fire marshal, everybody went south on, was it Highway 186 or 183? The one that goes through Glenwood. If it was operated out of Kirkland, they would have headed north, and they had gone through Reserve, and gone through Socorro, and then up to Albuquerque. But they headed south, and headed south. You're heading towards White Sands, or the old, not the old, Alamogordo. They're at Holloman Air Force Base, and they've had stuff come and go there, as far as aircraft. They had 117s and they had the F-22 and they disappeared, and they had drones, and now they're back flying F-16s again. But that is if we can retrieve any material from that crash site,
we only need a little piece.
Yeah. And
we got people in the Smithsonian, and they work at all the universities. They'd be happy to take a look at any of this material, as Greer calls it, any of that stuff. I know we've spoken with Michael Schratt in regards to maybe the Roswell medals. Somebody's gotten in their archives. It's hidden somewhere, and they're passing it down to their children and then their grandchildren. And somebody's got these medals, and if they could come forward with it, we've got the people that are ready to analyze it and prove that, hey, look, this is something otherworldly. But again, we only have a few minutes left, and again, it's been a pleasure hanging out with you guys and meeting you guys in person last year, and then we're going to be doing it this year. What's crazy is when we started filming, our first trip was first was Los Angeles with Michael Schratt over there in Santa Monica, and then we hooked up with Jim Goodall, and then we're calling John D'Souza and said, "Hey, we're in Arizona. Let's meet up." And it so happened that
Two
John
blocks from my
D'Souza
house.
was less than a minute and a half from Jim Goodall's place, and they didn't even know that they were in that close proximity. So that really was a serendipity after all,
Right.
and maybe something special we felt was going on in regards to this above top secret, and the knowledge behind it and the information you guys bring. Man, it's rock solid, and people are going to blow their minds when they see this, and they're going to get pissed off too, because they should get angry in regards to this technology that's been hidden from us for decades now. So any last words here, John? Appreciate you joining us over there in Arizona, and man, you brought it to the table in the Stocko.
I'll be just having local events here in Arizona, just on general matters, getting out the word on fake alien invasion and the counter narrative for disclosure that is going on. And I'll also be talking to people and showing them Above Top Secret that's coming out very soon, and that's going to be really important for people to see.
Hey, maybe we should do a midnight screening at this this conference we're doing in Scottsdale, April 8th, 9th, and 10th. I mean, the schedule's all packed and closed, but maybe we can throw it up, and people who want to be night owls can take a look at it. It'd be sort of fun for folks. I think that, there's going to be a lot of interest, I think, as a consequence. I know after Unacknowledged, we had a lot of resources come forward and still coming forward.
Absolutely. And all the contacts for everybody on the panel will be in the description below. So if you want to reach out to John D'Souza, the X-Men, and Dr. Greer, again, the links. And then also Michael Schratt with his new, it's actually blowing up on YouTube right now. And it's one of the best YouTube channels out there. And the evidence is off the hook.
Agree.
Blue Room Media, the documentation of the historical archives that builds up to these representations of the artist's work. But man, apparently you got 60,000 documents, so you're gonna have to stick around for a long time, Michael Schratt. You got a lot of information you're gonna have to put out to the world.
We have a lot of work to do.
I'll have some special surprises for you. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do.
Looking forward to seeing you guys in Arizona. And
I have a project for the Cousin Brothers. I have a friend of mine who's retiring from NSA. I sent her an email and said, "Do you believe in UFOs?" And almost as soon as I hit send, I have a reply. "Why did you see one?" And I said, "No, she said, "I can't comment on this platform, but they're here." There was no question. She said, "They're here."
Yeah.
So
yeah, there are a lot. And remember, there's a lot of corruption goes with this. In 1992, the head of Army intelligence offered me personally $2 billion if I would not do what I'm doing, and went behind my back to my wife and tried to get her to convince me to do it. I met with a man in 1993 at the Wrigley Mansion in Phoenix there. And he pulled me aside, and it was this midnight meeting with a bunch of these guys working this issue on the black side. And he said, "Look, we've provided at least $10 million to 10,000 people or more to secure their cooperation with our project and to keep it secret." And I said, "Yes, I know." I said, "The head of Army intelligence offered me $2 billion from after the Soviet Union fell in the early 90s, so they had confiscated a bunch of assets in Eastern Europe, and it was a slush fund, black fund." And so I said, "No thanks." But the reason we need to extend, I understand exactly firsthand how these guys operate. It's big golden sticks, and big golden carrots and big clubs, and they don't mind swinging the gold in front of you or swinging the club.
Yeah, we got them by the horns, everybody. We're gonna get this, and
you gotta get by the shorties.
Yeah, that's it.
We do.
Yeah, things are happening. It's quite exciting, and
It is.
People need to buckle up. But it's about time, right, everybody? Hey,
Right.
Absolutely.
That being said, guys, appreciate it. Good
Thank
work
you.
on getting the information out. We're really excited about this Above Top Secret. Again, the link is below. But be safe. We're going to be meeting up with everybody again here very shortly, and we look forward to seeing you all. And keep your eyes on the skies, everybody. Blake Cousins. We'll see you
Thank you.
next time.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Take care.
You guys have a good night.
Good night.
Appreciate it.
Will do.